And welcome back to Women Making Herstory with Women's Prosperity Network. I'm Trish Carr, one of the co-founders of Women's Prosperity, and I'm so excited that you joined us for this series. And I have today one of my dearest, closest, amazing friends, and I'm so thrilled to bring her to this community so that you could get to know her even more. And that is Michelle Patterson of My Jane. Michelle, I'm so excited you're with us today. Thanks for being here.
I'm laughing too because we got to get on, these calls so that we can catch up.
Right.
So nice. I thought, when I saw this on the calendar, I thought, well, at least I get to, spend time with my bestie.
Yeah, right. That's how I feel too. It's a wonderful thing.
We have to do an interview. We have to record it. Okay, fine.
Yes, but I get to see you, which is so great. Don't you love that? So I'm really thrilled to have you here because, number one, you're doing something really important for women in terms of our wellness and our health. And also because this series is about visionary women. And when I think of visionary women, I think of you. And I know your story. And I remember you saying since the time you were a little girl, when you actually worked for I believe it was your school newspaper, and you interviewed the governor of California when you were like 12 years old. And you've been a visionary for a long time. So tell me a little bit about your inspiration for what you do. You've been involved with women's causes, if you will, for a long time. Talk to me about your inspiration.
Oh, well, thanks, Trish. It's interesting how we oftentimes we look on our past, and that then guides us to take certain directions. And sometimes those past experiences are not always positive experiences. So I'm happy to report back as this was one of those really positive, life experiences. And it was when I was 12 years old, I had the opportunity to interview the governor of the state of California. And if you could imagine, I'm this kid, I'm the tallest in my school. I shot up. I had just really horrible posture. I would slouch to the point where every time my parents would see me, they'd say, you need to be in a back race. You need to straighten up and stand up straight. And I was painfully shy. To the point where I did not say boo, at all. And my dad worked for the Attorney General, who was named governor, and that was Governor George Duke Majan. And my dad said, come with me to the holiday event and you can interview, the new now elected governor. So I went and I had all my questions, rehearsed and scribed out. And I'm asking Governor Duke Majan, what's your favorite hobby? How many kids do you have? So really earth-shattering.
That's really, so Barbara Walters would be proud.
Oh, yeah. It was like, just direct. And he looked at me and he said, Michelle, that was the best interview I've ever heard. And I thought, you know what? I remember at that moment when he said this, it was as if, someone said, you matter and you count and your message is important. And my little back straightened up and I stood up tall and I felt this sense of, really, that I could make a difference, that I could, because of my voice and because of, really gathering up the courage to be able to ask those earth-shattering questions, that I could do a good job and I could help a lot of people. And so that's where I originally got my inspiration. And I had beautiful role models, in my life, my grandmother being one of them, who lived with us while my kids were getting raised. So my kids' great grandmother, and she moved in with us and, just raised, myself, my husband, my kids, and just really, really took care of us. And she passed away right before my very first conference for the California Women's Conference back in 2011. So it's very serendipitous when you start looking at how we can show up for others. Here was Governor George Duke Majan. It was, a 10-minute interaction, a 10-minute interview, and he took the time to tell this 12-year-old, painfully shy girl, that, you have something to share. You have something, you know, of importance. And I think oftentimes we go through life where we don't realize that sometimes you don't have that, you don't have that ability to be able to see what effect you have on people. And he recently passed away this past year, and I had the honor of being invited for a press conference at his home.
Wow.
But before his passing, and he invited me in. We had press there, and his wife Gloria was there. So here, Trish, they lived in the same house for 50 years. And there we were sitting on his couch, and we're not talking about politics. We're not talking about, world affairs. What we're talking about is how he inspired this 12-year-old kid. It like still gets me choked up, because I just think sometimes it's like we make these decisions because we're tired or we're rushed or we're this, and we don't realize, just by being loving and taking that 10 minutes, what that did. I mean, it did so much so that I was able to step in and continue on this conference that he started 30 years ago. He started the same year that I had interviewed him. And so when it came up where this conference was being canceled, I received a phone call, and it said, Michelle, would you want to take on this conference? And I thought, how ironic. This is the same conference that was started by the person who inspired me and gave me, this time and to really connect with me at age 12.
Right. Well, he may have inspired you, and your grandmother certainly schooled you. But Michelle, what you've been able to accomplish with the California Women's Conference, with eWomen Network, with all of the things, I can't even name them all. And right now what you're doing with My Jane is an entirely new industry that I'm so thrilled to see that you are really niching it down for women. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, what you're up to, because you're supporting us with our health and our wellness.
Well, and I appreciate you bringing that up, and that just goes to show me too. I mean, my heart, and being one of my closest confidants, really, really close girlfriends. I mean, you and I have played together in New York, and we till all hours of the night.
We're not telling anybody about that. Remember, everything that happens in New York stays in New York. Remember?
From our visits to the UN. I mean, just some really, really fabulous times. Yeah. But truly, Trish, I feel like at this point in my life, I feel like I've been preparing for this point in my life, really for decades. And what I did with the conference is we focused on getting women the resources and the tools that they needed to be successful. That was the whole reason why Governor George Duke Beijing started this conference. And what kept popping up during this time was cannabis. So we work on the 5 to Thrive and living your best life. So the best life blueprint is career, physical, financial, social, and community. And Gallup Poll did a 50-year study that said, if you focus on these 5 areas and you make sure that you're addressing goals and what your purpose is and what your vision is and what it is that you want for your life in these 5 areas, you will have a rock star life. So I've been super focused on figuring out, what does that look like? How can I create this fabulous life? And then how can I in turn share with my community, what this life looks like? And so what kept coming up around all of these areas was cannabis, and the stigma around cannabis, and the controversy around cannabis, and what is healthy and what is not, and what is a healthy option as it relates to our opioid crisis.
Right.
And really uncovering that. And ironically, on a personal note, it came during a time when my dad, he retired from a career of law enforcement. He represented police officers for California in the DEA. So here he spent an entire career, taking, marijuana and pot off the streets. And then here, I show up and it's like, I'm looking at solutions and being able to bring this to women, and let's dissect, the conversation, and let's not be afraid of having the conversation, and let's not, jump into, blaming and shaming, and let's look at the facts for what the facts are. And I ended up getting a phone call, and I was petrified of talking to my father about the fact that now his daughter, the oldest in the family, was in this line of business. And what's interesting is, and my dad is just, and he's my superhero, and I look up to him, and he's just a brilliant human being. But he, in talking about this, he was very open-minded, so much so that he ends up calling back, because he had a situation with my mom where she was found at the foot of the stairs, leaving the house. She was going shopping at 4 a.m. in the morning. She had her purse on, she had her shoes on, she had no clothes on, and my mother is now going shopping because she is taking Ambien and she is sleepwalking. And what was happening is she'd been taking this medication for the last 5 years. It was wreaking havoc, on her organs. She had to have a pacemaker, installed. And it was just, he was calling me, and he was at a point where it was just like, what? There needs to be another option. This is not working. And not only was it, her hurting her, it was not solving the problem of having these sleepless nights. She was not sleeping. And so what we did was we went ahead, we treated my mom as my first experienced tester. And I have you doing that as well, which, sending you, product. And it's only product that I would give myself, and I would actually give my family. And we went ahead, we gave her a vape pen. And so we have video of her, and she's there with the vape pen, and the smoke, came out. And it's not as prevalent as if you're smoking, from height, but it's still smoke. And so not only do you have the stigma around marijuana, but you also have the stigma around smoking. Okay. And so my mother then said, this is startling. That was the words that she used. The smoke is startling. So we didn't give her that. And then we ended up giving her a tincture, which is just a droplet. We put it right under her tongue. And so night 1, she sleeps 7 hours. Second night, 8 hours. And then so forth. And she keeps sleeping. She had a couple different breaks, but what she was finding was she didn't even need it every single day. Right. And having now, it's this like she's having, rest. And when you're not sleeping, when you don't feel good, and when you feel all prickly, and you don't function. You can't function during the day. You can't function. So for me, what was happening was here I'd spent the last decade on this crusade to find women, what they needed to have their best experience. What's available out there. Not when we, I'm going to lose weight, and next year when I lose weight, or next year when I find the love of my life, or next year when I get the house I want, or I get the raise I want. No, what can I do right now, today, to start feeling good? And when you're not sleeping, and I look to, my friend Ariana Huffington, she did her whole book on Thrive and focused on women and men getting a good night's sleep. And what is the value of getting a good night's sleep? So for me, it was, if I could focus in on my family and my immediate needs with my family, and then look at myself and say, okay, I need to feel good. In order for me to best care for my family, I've got to feel good. I've got to take the oxygen mask off. I've got to put it on myself first. Right. And we hear that all the time.
Right, but this is I love what you're up to here, because not only is it for sleep, but the whole stigma around cannabis and how it gets you high and it's an escape drug, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about women having access to an alternative to pharmaceuticals. That's what we're talking about. And I personally have friends who, when they use cannabis, their joint pain goes away, their backs don't hurt anymore, they're able to get sleep. They're also able to shut off their brain, which is going a mile a minute. My husband always says,
I have it. I mean, I'm CBD. I got CBD.
Yeah, there you go.
Boom.
There you go. So, and think about this. I have personal friends who are still to this day dealing with opioid problems because they took it for back injuries. To this day, still suffering from having to take a pharmaceutical that they're addicted to. So I honor you, Michelle Patterson, for doing what you're doing, for bringing real alternatives to women. And I'd love for you to share, how can people find more found out more about you and My Jane? I have a link on the bottom of here, you'll see as you're looking at this, that says, go get my free gift. And that's going to link you right up to the website. But go ahead and tell us what we can find when we get there.
Well, and I think along those same lines is, someone asked me last week and they said, is it overwhelming doing a global movement? And I said, it is if you phrase it that way. Right. I said, but the way that I look at it is if I just go back and get my core peeps, my family, my friends, and I reach out to them and I get them what they need and I educate them in that process, then I did my job, then I did that. And so then I looked at it, and I reached out to you. It was like, out of all the lists, I mean, and the list is pretty long, Trish. I mean, it's everything from the United Nations, to the different universities, all these different lists. And I listed out and I said, you know what? Women's Prosperity Network. I mean, that group, you show up in your true, authentic self. I've had the honor of speaking at your events, and what you and your two sisters have achieved is exactly the type of conversation that we want to be having. It's not all the fanfare. It's not showing up. I know you're great. I'm great, but it's talking about how can we best equip, each other,
Right.
And it's not about, we no longer do we have to compete for that one spot, or no longer happiness isn't derived by, okay, my friend Trish gets it and then no one else gets it.
Right.
No,
Right.
we all get to go there.
We
all get to go there. So for me, it was looking out is who in my sphere of influence, can I go ahead and get this education platform? And that's what My Jane is. It's normalizing cannabis so that we can go ahead and use this plant medicine, for what it's worth. And it's individualized. So if you go to My Jane, and it's just like it's spelled, MyJane.com, and you go in there, you're able to sign up for free membership right now while I'm going out and talking to my different groups. You could put down how you heard about us, and definitely put down Women's Prosperity Network, and you can do WPN and put that in. And that way we can go ahead and work with you along the conversation. And we're starting with the conversation around cannabis, because it is that, I mean, here I'm going to be 49, and, I had the conversation with my dad at 47, and I would have rather have told him that I was pregnant out of wedlock. and I joke about this because I said, Dad, I'm a healer, not a dealer.
Right. I love that. I love that.
We've got to look at these, and we've got to look at these options. And what's happening right now with women is that we're caring for our aging parents. We're caring for ourselves. Our food system is not working for us.
Right.
Look at the pharmaceutical system. I mean, because this special interest groups are really driving. So for me, I show up, and I'm at a point in my life, and I don't know if it's because I'm embarking on the 50, which I'm really, really excited about, actually.
It's fun.
Yeah. I'm telling my lover, Eric, of 22 years, I'm like, you're looking really good these days. We're getting into the stage of like just knowing and feeling good in our own skin, but also coming back and saying, you know what, look at these options. You are the wellness manager for yourself, for your family. Don't just take somebody's word because they're telling you this is a great product. And so what we're doing with My Jane, we went through 1,100 products before we released our first box. And so what we're doing, we curate these cannabis boxes and we focus on low THC, so that high factor that we were just talking about, and high CBD. So it's about helping women function, being able to be effective with their day. It's not about getting them loopy. And I'll give you an example, and you know this because you know me for a long time. Personally, alcohol, it wasn't serving a purpose for me. It wasn't helping me show up in the best version of myself. And so I'm coming up on 2 years having given up alcohol. And for me, because I have a healthy substitution in cannabis, and I'm able to go ahead and, take cannabis, whether it's a tincture, whether it's, a piece of chocolate, or it's a topical where I can get some relief, which when you use the topical, it doesn't have the psychoactivity, but I can go ahead and use that. And I have the same feeling as taking away those aches and pains, taking away that edge that I went to a glass of wine for. And so I've been able to substitute, that out, and I don't miss it at all. In fact, for me, somebody suggesting to drink, and I still go out with my girlfriends, I still, there's not a party that I don't miss.
I'm sure not.
I'm still having the time of my life and being as social as I've always been. But that social lubricant that I used in alcohol, I don't need, I don't need it to take the edge off. So there's so much available out there. And what happens is you go in and you sign up on My Jane, and we actually connect you with one of our wellness advisors. And so you can be anywhere in the world and you get a 15-minute free consultation.
Oh, that's great.
That time, you get to talk to an advisor about you. And you could talk about anything. You could talk about your aging parents and some of the challenges that they're facing. You can talk about your child who is taking Adderall and you want to have a healthy substitution for Adderall. But it's looking at and addressing, what's available out there and how you can include it into your life without having the side effects, without having the that addiction that you want, or your body craves.
Right.
It's how do we address that and not shaming ourselves or wronging ourselves? It's human beings in our earth suit. We need to come together and stop with the stigma and stop with shaming and just let's talk about the facts. And I tell people this. I'm clearly, you could tell I'm very, very, very passionate. Having had to have the conversation with my parents
and dad,
my dad, but I don't care. And I'm at the point in the wellness and looking at what's good for my family, which is the most important thing for me. And I work very, very, very hard at having really connected relationships with my kids and with my husband, and not taking something that's going to numb that because I don't want to face it.
Right. And that's not what we're talking about here. So thank you for being a stand for women to have access to something that's available but has a silly stigma to it. Thank you for making it easy for us to participate in a way that it's simple. Thank you for being a stand for women, and thank you for being who you are, and thank you for being my friend. I so appreciate you. And be sure to go to myjane.com. Be sure to sign up and find out more, because we all have people in our lives that could use an alternative to something that they're using right now. And this may be the alternative that would work. So thank you, Michelle Patterson, for being with me today. Thank you for watching, for being a part of Women Making Herstory. Be sure to go to myjane.com. And while you're at it, go ahead and click on Join the Movement at the bottom of the page and become a part of this incredible movement of women that Women's Prosperity Network is. A movement of women coming together arm in arm to make a massive positive difference in the world through our projects, our products, and our services. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Michelle. Appreciate you. Bye-bye, everybody. See you next time.